Everybody in Sacramento is excited about the new Kings duo of De'Aaron Fox and DeMar DeRozan, and rightfully so. But there's another duo we should be talking more about: DeMar DeRozan and Domantas Sabonis. Will Z from Sports Illustrated believes that that is a perfect match, and the two are going to complement each other in so many great ways. We'll dive into why right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long and all off season long too. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. The playoffs are over, right? We're in the thick of the summer months. Nothing basketball-wise is going on outside of NBA Summer League, so sports just aren't sports in the way that we want them to. But FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. And of course, we spent so much time here on Locked On Kings since it became official that DeMar DeRozan was joining the Kings, that he and De'Aaron Fox are going to be a feared duo, especially in crunch time, right? Two of the most clutch players in the league playing next to each other. How do defenses stop them? Well, that doesn't mean that Domantas Sabonis takes a back seat. Domas is still, and arguably still, the most important aspect of this Kings offense. And how can he and DeRozan complement each other? Well, my guest here on the podcast, Will Z, also known as Will Z Stats, he believes that not only is the duo going to work well together, he believes they're perfect for each other. He released an article on Sports Illustrated diving into it. Go and check that article out. We're going to break down a lot of what he talked about. Plus, we'll talk about how the entire core five in Sacramento will coexist, plus what Kevin Huerter's role will look like. It's a great conversation, so I hope you enjoy my conversation with Will Z. When we first learned DeMar DeRozan was coming to Sacramento, we immediately thought about the duo of DeRozan and De'Aaron Fox, two of the most clutch players, if not the most clutch players in the NBA. And that duo is certainly to be feared. But what about DeMar DeRozan and Domantas Sabonis? Well, my guest here, Will Z, you may know him as Will Z Stats, featured all the time on ESPN 1320, puts out all of the best numbers to dive deep into Sacramento Kings basketball. But now Will Z is a member of Sports Illustrated covering the Sacramento Kings. Will, first off, congratulations, my man. It's very well deserved. You've worked hard over the last few years to get an opportunity like this, and I'm thrilled to read your work. And right away, you give us a phenomenal article diving into the DeMar DeRozan, Domantas Sabonis. You call it a perfect match. Why?
Thanks, Matt. I really appreciate it. Excited for the opportunity and another way to get more content to people. And what stood out to me about Sabonis and DeRozan, first, I think, is that no one really talked about the two of them. Like you said, everyone went straight to Fox and DeRozan, which makes sense. They're the backcourt wing for DeRozan. But Sabonis has such a great way of getting everyone involved on offense. We know that more than, I think, most of the NBA. And I think DeRozan is just going to be the perfect player alongside Sabonis. Sabonis, he doesn't just give people open looks at three, which, again, everyone talked about how DeRozan is not going to really shoot threes, and I think that's okay, especially working off of Sabonis. So I just can't wait to see how they play together. And a fun little thing that I did was I wanted to go back and look at DeRozan and who the bigs that he's played with have been in his career. 15 seasons, so there's a lot of bigs that he's played with. Right. Because when Sabonis was traded to the Kings, it's pretty clear that Sabonis and Fox, Sabonis was the best big that Fox has ever played with. I don't know if that's the case for DeRozan. If you look at who he's played with, Chris Bosh, Serge Ibaka, Jonas Valanciunas, LaMarcus Aldridge, Nikola Vucevic in Chicago recently, like those are a lot of really great players at that center position. But none of them do what Sabonis does. Sabonis last season, 8.2 assists. The most assists that a big that DeRozan has played with was actually last year with Vucevic, and that was just 3.3. So he's never played with a facilitator in that big man position before. And that's where I'm so excited to see what the two of them do out of the pick and roll, out of the dribble handoff action. I think there's just so much that can be unlocked for both of their games that we haven't seen maybe from either of them.
Yeah, Kevin Huerter said when we first, it was the first season that everybody was together. So it was the season that they made the playoffs, and it was during media day, and it stuck with me. Kevin Huerter, when asked about playing with Domantas Sabonis, Kevin said that Sabonis is the easiest player in the league to play with because he loves to try and find you and complement your style. And lo and behold, that season, Huerter and Sabonis turned into quite a duo with the dribble handoffs, and Sacramento relied on that heavily, and they still do. But what about how DeMar DeRozan can help Domas? Because we know Domas can help anybody in the league, but DeMar, like, I've been very intrigued and excited about the idea of how DeMar DeRozan can help open up space for even De'Aaron. And people go, well, I thought spacing would be a problem because DeMar is not necessarily a three-point scorer. DeMar does not need a lot of room at all to be effective. And every time he puts the ball on the floor from the mid-range, defense has to constantly keep an eye on him because he can score from literally anywhere at any time while being smothered. While double team does not matter. Like, that is where he lives, and that's going to open up opportunities for everybody else. But you touch a little bit in this article upon the recent combination that he had with Nikola Vucevic and how much he was actually able to help Vucevic on that side. So how do you think DeRozan can complement Domas for once instead of Domas complimenting everybody else?
Right. Yeah. So the numbers that popped out to me are, if you look at all of DeRozan's assists last year, 95 of them went to Vucevic. That was the most on the team. So that was his kind of favorite passing target in terms of setting up teammates. And I think that just kind of came out of the pick and roll. I'm really interested because in just watching clips, it was a lot of pick and pop. Vooch, I think, is a more willing shooter than Sabonis is. So I'm really interested to see if Sabonis takes that mid-range or the three-point shot more, just because when DeRozan goes, if it's like a pick and roll in the mid-range, which we see a lot with Keegan, the two of them do, the defender is going to have to help off and protect that shot and defend the shot of DeRozan in the mid-range because it's his shot. That's what he does. We all know it. So Sabonis, I think, will be more open in that high post shot. I don't know if he'll take it, but that's something I'm intrigued about. And then the other thing we see, Sabonis, I think, is a very underrated roll man. Monk sets him up so well, and even Huerter, they work so well in that kind of pick and roll drive game, where I think that's where we might see the two of them connect more than the pick and pop game, and see if we can get Sabonis some easy looks inside, because a lot of times he's getting the ball down low, kind of going to work, getting double teamed and passing out of it. But can he get more looks where he is working off of action of others, like you were saying? So some numbers to back up that the connection will be there. I just don't know how until we see it.
A lot of bigs of the skill set of Sabonis typically like to operate in the high post. Sabonis operates in the high post. Like, he operates from the top of the 3-point line. That's where we see a lot of the DHOs for Huerter coming off the curl or working with Keegan and stuff. The Kings like to run the ball through Domantas Sabonis in a range that he's not necessarily confident shooting the basketball, which teams have tried to exploit. I think the addition of DeMar DeRozan also will help with that too, in a way. But how do you see Domantas Sabonis and DeMar DeRozan's pick and roll combination working, assuming it is still going to be initiated from outside of the 3-point line versus like on the elbow or top of the key, where DeRozan historically is more comfortable working?
Yeah. And maybe we do just see more 3-point shots from Sabonis. Like, maybe this is the year where the volume really picks up. He only shot 1.1 the last 3 seasons, actually, every year with the Kings. He's 1.1 attempts from beyond the arc, but 37.9% from 3 last season. It's a great percentage. Even if it dips to like 35, I think I'd still be fine with him shooting 2 to 3 per game. and really forcing the defense to get out and defend him, because that alone would just open up so much more for DeRozan off of the picks, and let alone the others moving without the ball. So maybe just the more volume from Sabonis from beyond the arc. I'm hoping. I feel like all Kings fans are kind of just hoping and wishing that would finally do a little uptick, but we'll see.
I even think De'Aaron Fox's 3-point game is going to be positively impacted by this, because we saw that was a shot that De'Aaron clearly wanted to take more. And I think there are two sides of it. One, he's tremendously more confident in that shot. The volume last season suggests that. But I think there's also a strategy behind taking that shot, a wear and tear of, hey, I don't have to go to the paint or go to the mid-range and get whacked and get hit as much as I used to have to. Like we saw 2 seasons ago when Fox won the Clutch Player of the Year, the mid-range is where he dominated. Like the kind of shots where De'Aaron dominated is what DeMar DeRozan is known for. Now that you have 2 mid-range threats in Fox and DeRozan, I'm not saying Fox goes completely away from that mid-range game, because it's one of the best pieces in his arsenal. But now maybe Fox can get away with a higher volume of 3-point shots that a lot of Kings fans, myself included, criticized last season. Sometimes it felt like he was taking those shots too much and we wanted to see him get downhill more. Now that you have DeRozan out there with him, I think that better complements each other and opens the door for, hey, if you're worried about spacing, let Fox be the guy to space the floor a little bit more.
Yeah, and Fox shot 39.1% on his catch and shoot threes last season, 35.6 on pull-ups. So both good numbers, but the catch and shoot just a little more accurate. And if you look at the attempts, 3.1 catch and shoot attempts per game, 4.5 pull-ups. So he definitely favored the pull-up three, which it's a lot of times the shot clock down at the end. You see him take a lot of those, the pull-up threes in transition. Good shots, but can he get more easy looks? He was great in the corner. I don't have the number right in front of me, but his corner 3-point percentage was a good amount better than his above the break threes. So can you get him more of those easy looks from beyond the arc? And can the two of them combine, Fox and DeRozan, if Fox is taking most of the threes and DeRozan takes a few, the two of them combined maybe take 14 a game, and I'm totally cool. Split it up however you want. If Fox is taking 14 and DeRozan's taking 0, great. If Fox is taking 7 and DeRozan gets going, take 7. Like, I try and total things together between players sometimes. It's kind of a fun little game that I play in my head, and it evens things out. So there will be more 3-point shots to go around because we know Mike Brown and the staff, they want to shoot a lot of threes. So there's going to be more of those when you're losing a player like Harrison Barnes, who takes a high amount of threes, and bringing in someone like DeRozan. So I think we'll see Fox get more of those looks. And maybe it does open up his inside game even more. Where 2 years ago, he shot 75% in the restricted area. I think last year was 66%. We just saw a downtick. Again, just less willing to go in. And if he can get that inside shot, the 75% was just, that's like a top 15 mark, and that's among centers in everyone in the NBA. So it's possible that the spacing really trickles down to let Fox get not only the easier shots on the perimeter, but the easier shots on the inside as well.
Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. We all love sports. We love them so much that we never want them to stop. And even though it feels like sports is all over the calendar 24/7, sometimes you have those times, like right now, maybe where we're getting fewer games and sports just aren't sports in the way that we want them to. Well, the good news is FanDuel is always there for you. FanDuel keeps your sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open the app and dream up your bets anytime you are in the mood to do so. And all summer long, to get us through this offseason, FanDuel is hooking up every single customer. It doesn't matter if you're new or you've been there forever. Every single customer gets a boost or a bonus daily. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long on FanDuel. Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the absolute most out of your summer. FanDuel is an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. there's so much about DeMar DeRozan joining the Kings to be excited about. If there anything, and we might have already touched on it already, so we can reiterate it, whether it's from the numbers or just from the eye test or just your understanding of who DeMar DeRozan is as a basketball player, what about his addition and what he brings to Sacramento excites you the most?
I think just his professionalism, like from a non-numbers on the court perspective, just him being ready to go every game, pretty much, just I think is what the Kings may have missed last year, and someone who's going to keep everyone accountable. We always talk about the player, the leader on the team. You need a leader who's going to also be a leader on the court in terms of their production. He has that ability. He can be a vocal leader and a player leader, where you're not having to have JaVale McGee be the leader. Like, I love JaVale McGee. I thought he was a good addition to the roster last year, but he's not going to impact the game on the court in the way that you kind of need someone. So just having someone who you know you can count on night in and night out is so crucial, I think, for this specific roster.
Well, I don't know if you have stats or numbers to kind of support this. I was having a conversation with an assistant coach, an NBA assistant coach, about DeMar DeRozan, and he talked about how DeMar addresses probably the biggest weakness of the Kings offense from 2 years ago when they were the best offense in the league. And he was talking about how when defenses would take Sacramento out of their sets, when the DHOs didn't work or possessions got late in the shot clock, Sac had to typically rely on their one isolation scorer, which is De'Aaron Fox. And at times he bailed them out, but at times they struggled. And on top of that, one of the areas I'm most excited about the addition of DeMar DeRozan is not just late in the shot clock, but how many times were the Kings on the wrong end of just these massive runs, 14-2, 16-2, 18-0, that would completely swing games, right? DeMar gives them somebody in addition to De'Aaron, not instead of De'Aaron, doesn't replace De'Aaron, but in addition to De'Aaron, and even Malik, gives them one of the most reliable, just get me a bucket guys in this league over his entire career. What do you think about the aspect of how DeMar directly impacts the struggles of even the best Kings offense, plus the struggles of last year's Kings offense?
Oh, it's so true. So even with all the talent that the Kings have, like you said, Fox was really the only one that could go out and get his own bucket. And there are numbers that back that up. So looking at one of the things I did when DeRozan got traded here was NBA.com has unassisted and assisted shots. So the percent of the players' field goals that are either assisted or unassisted. So if you look at last year, Fox led the Kings with 486 of those. The second drops down to Sabonis at 239. Then Monk third with 165. And no other player hit triple digits. DeRozan, 424 total unassisted field goals. Wow. So he's right in line with Fox in that high range of that's what he can do. And having two players who can do that on a very reliable cadence, they can do it pretty much whenever they need to, is so important. And in terms of the runs, I mean, we saw DeRozan himself. I went back and pulled up this box score of the game where the Bulls came back from the, I think 22-point deficit.
Yeah.
If you look at DeRozan in that game, 19 points, 7 of 7. This is just the fourth quarter.
Right.
19 points, 7 of 7 from the field, 1 of 1 from 3, 4 of 4 from the free throw line with 2 steals. Like, he is not only going to allow the Kings to not fall into those traps and those long runs, but he can create them for the Kings as well. Like, so they have the possibility of turning one of their weaknesses last year in going on those 14-2, 16-8 runs. And maybe they can be the ones that do those more often, which we saw, I think, 2 years ago when the offense was at the super high power. But it just gives them more variability in their offense where they're not just doing one thing, which I thought they did so much better 2 years ago than last year. They could score and beat you in so many different ways, and they became a little one-dimensional last year. Whether that's they got found out from the league or players just weren't hitting their shots, it was an issue, and they need something else to liven up the offense. And DeRozan, the numbers show it, the eye test shows it. the gut feeling tells it. Like, he is going to fill so much that this offense needs.
In that fourth quarter stat line that you shared, there's a number in there that I think is going to get lost behind the 19 points and the incredible offense. It's the 2 steals. Now, getting a lot of steals doesn't necessarily mean you're a elite defender. De'Aaron Fox led the league in steals last season. I think he's getting better and better as a defender. DeMar is not known for the defensive end. But again, this conversation that I had with this assistant coach, this coach believes that DeMar has been blamed, or because he's been kind of the star, one of the top guys, if not the guy on his respective rosters, he has taken a lot of the load of their defensive struggles just because he's been the top guy, to where you look at his deflection numbers. He averages over a deflection a game. He's active. He's versatile. He's smart. I think the high basketball IQ plays a very big factor into how he's going to play defense. And we know that the Sacramento Kings, barring the allowance of the officials, want to play physical, and he's capable of playing physical as well. Defensively, I have very realistic expectations of DeMar DeRozan. I'm not expecting him to suddenly become a great defender at 35 years old, this late in his career, joining the Sacramento Kings just because Mike Brown wants that. But DeMar is seasoned enough, and I think Mike and DeMar are going to understand each other enough to be able to make sure he's not any sort of liability. This assistant coach told me there really never will be a night that DeMar is more of a liability on the defensive end than he is a boon on the offensive end. Even if DeMar's not hitting shots, he's such an offensive presence that he opens up opportunities for your offense just by having him on the floor. What do you think about DeMar defensively and what he brings to Sacramento? And I'm not looking for any way that he can lead the Kings defensively. I'm looking for him to fit in on the defensive end of the floor.
I totally agree. Like, the best thing I think is that you're pairing him in the forward spots with Keegan Murray. Like, Keegan, we saw last year, he's going to get the lead assignment between that 3 or 4. I think he can guard either of them. We've seen him go out and guard Steph Curry, like on assignment, not on switches. Like, he goes out and guards. So having Keegan be able to go out there and take that, like, harder of the 2 forwards, I think allows DeRozan to kind of fill in that off ball, get deflections, get steals. And like you said, I don't think he's going to be hurtful on defense. I don't envision him as the defensive stopper, but he doesn't need to be that. He needs to go out and be a plus on offense, and he's going to do that. He's so good in that role. And just at worst, I think he's average on defense, and that's at worst. Like, I don't think we're talking about someone who other teams are going to target over and over and over again. I think he's someone who will hold his own, he'll play hard, and when you have the type of production that you do on offense, that's more than enough. I'm not worried about his defense at all.
You brought up Keegan Murray and how they can coexist on the defensive end. Maybe this is wishful thinking, but I asked DeMar about it when I got to speak with him for a few minutes after his press conference, and he talked about how much he looks forward to and enjoys playing the veteran role and giving back to young players. I think what he can do for Keegan on the offensive end is extraordinary, because I think what the Sacramento Kings have been looking for Keegan, the ability to go and create his own shot and be effective offensively outside of the 3-point line, that mid-range game is the next level of Keegan's game to be unlocked. I think if he's able to unlock that, he's an all-star caliber player. He's someone that can average 20 points per game for the Kings. Now that you've added DeRozan, the Kings don't need Keegan to be that next season in order to be the best version of themselves, but they still need him to be good to hopefully great. How do you think DeMar DeRozan can impact? Granted, DeMar, somewhat different position, different size than Keegan, but DeMar's skill set, if he could share a little of that and help Keegan, the same way Keegan worked with De'Aaron Fox all summer last summer and suddenly became a great on-ball defender, working with DeMar for the next 3 seasons, hopefully, how do you think that will open up Keegan's mid-range game?
It's, I think, going to do a lot. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but down the line. I think I have no idea what Keegan's offense is going to look like this year, what they're going to ask him to do. Yeah. Like, I couldn't even take a guess on terms of like what the plan is. But we saw it last year. Everyone talked about Fox and Keegan working together in the offseason, like you said. And if you looked closely, you could see Keegan doing Fox's moves. Like he would go out and do the same like footwork, the same like shoulder bumps, and that Fox would do. So just adding another player like DeRozan, if he can just get moves from him in that mid-range game and just kind of take on those abilities that he can use for years down the line, I think will be so valuable for him and the Kings organization, because like he's still so young and learning and can grow into that lead role at maybe a slower pace than we all were hoping for last season. But it's just, you're getting one of the best, if not the best, mid-range scorers. Oh, maybe Kevin Durant's the best. But, I mean, obviously, DeRozan, one of the best mid-range scorers. And being able to work with him and Fox allows for Keegan to learn from two different styles of players and maybe become a morph of the two. That's wishful thinking, but I think it's just so important for him to have so many different veteran presences on this team.
Another quick pause here as I tell you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not burning cash. With all the parts you need and all the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home some huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. I think it's fair to say, and I don't think it's an insult to Malik or Keegan to say that the Kings have a new big three. It's Fox, it's Sabonis, and it's DeMar DeRozan. But everybody knows they have a core five. You add Malik and you add Keegan into it. That, to me, starting lineups are to be debated. And, Will, I'm going to have a huge debate here on Locked On Kings when we get to training camp time, because I am firmly in the camp of just start Malik freaking Monk. Just do it. But that's I don't see how that's not your closing lineup. It's your five best players. They all complement each other in some way. But the problem, I guess, that you have with that group, and it's a good problem to have, is there's only one basketball. How do all five touch it, right? Malik likes to control with the ball in his hands. De'Aaron is going to have more opportunity to play off the ball this season than he's ever had before. And I can't wait to see how that opens up his game. But DeMar working off the ball. Malik was so good with the ball in his hands, operating in the pick and roll with Domantas Sabonis or whatever big man he was out there with. Keegan Murray can kind of fall back into the same role that he had as a rookie on offense, which is being an absolute perimeter poacher and torching everybody from the perimeter. And hopefully he adds more to his game of getting to the basket and that mid-range shot to where the Kings can rely on him for a 30 or 40-point night every once in a while. Not even to mention Kevin Huerter, who I think could be the flamethrower off the bench. The addition of Devin Carter when he's available to play. Trey Lyles is still a floor spacing big coming off the bench too. Like, this team is, in theory, loaded with offensive weapons, but again, there's one basketball. If you're Mike Brown, how do you even begin to tackle that? Or do you stick with the fleet? The Kings have always had this kind of free-flowing, read and react offense. And one of Mike's pillars is, hey, 0.5 seconds, right? Half a second, make a decision. You're going to shoot, you're going to attack, you're going to move the basketball. Make that decision in 0.5 seconds. Do they stick with that now with an added layer of DeMar DeRozan? Or do you think Mike has to maybe get into the playbook a little bit more and start to kind of draw up sets and specific things for these players to make sure everybody is utilized properly?
I like the concept of sticking with it, with adding in DeRozan and his high basketball IQ. And just, we saw it with the Celtics last year. You never knew who from the Celtics were going to be the top scorer of the night. It could be any player on their team. And I think that's kind of what the Kings, what I envision them when they're functioning at their best, is you just ride the hot hand. And some nights that may be DeRozan, some nights it may be Trey Lyles, some nights, like, name a player. Any one of them has the ability to get going. And by having that free-flowing, quick-moving offense, I think allows everyone to get involved. And when you're dealing with having so many, they're not super ball-dominant players, but having players of that kind who that's their way to impact the game, to get everyone involved, I think just makes sense to me. And have the drawn up plays for end of game, out of bounds, like end of quarter, just certain, maybe more situational, that you have something that you can pull out of the playbook. But other than that, just let the players go out and play and just keep it fast and let them see what they can do.
Before we wrap up, I'm going to sneak in a question about Kevin Huerter, because I spent time on a recent episode talking about Kevin Huerter's role. I have an idea of what I think Kevin Huerter's role should be, and it's pretty straightforward, but I don't want to influence your answer because I want to hear from yours first. If you were to say, like, whatever, maybe he's starting, maybe he's coming off the bench, whatever you think going into training camp, Kevin Huerter's role is most likely to be or should be with this team, what is that role to you?
I like him coming off the bench just as a super high offensive player. Like, just come out, shoot, get your shots. And I'm all for them keeping Huerter. I like it. I think that he just, again, pairs so well with Sabonis in that dribble handoff game. I was going to be very sad when they traded him, and I'm a little happy that they didn't. I don't know what's going to happen down the line, but if he can just come in and be the type of shooter he was 2 years ago, or even a little under that, somewhere in between last year and the year before. I have a full article on him as well, and looking at his numbers on SI.com. So go check that out. But he is so valuable in where the league is with three-point shooting. You're never going to be in a bad spot having a shooter of his caliber come off the bench or start or whatever it is. I'm really intrigued to see what they do with the starting lineup, but it feels like it's going to be either Monk or Keegan. It doesn't feel like Huerter will get that spot back, but again, who knows? He's had it for 2 years, and it's his spot until he got injured. I don't know. But I love the fact that he's still on the team and can be that spark. And he's not just a three-point shooter. He has that 2-point game that I think is super undervalued. So he, I think, just can focus more on offense. I think last year the defensive side of the ball was not so much an issue for him on the court, but maybe he got in his head a little. He was asked to do a lot, but you could tell he was always trying, which is all you can ask for on defense. You want someone who's going to give their full effort and hustle. And if he can do that with some three-point shooting back up to his career numbers, it's great.
Yeah, one of the good things about Kevin Huerter, too, is you don't have to worry about any kind of overpay for a diminished role, because he's got 2 years left on his deal, like $16 million a year. He's a bargain. He's a bargain contract. So regardless of where you pay or you play him, money doesn't become a factor. I'm in agreement with you, Will. I think his days as a starter are done simply because of his defense. Because team after team after team, no matter what, they targeted him right out of the gate. Whoever he was guarding, that player typically ate in the first quarter just to get the offense going. And how many times was it an obscure player that had a good first quarter against the Kings because that was Kevin Huerter's assignment, and then it was the star that would then turn up in the second or third quarters and get going. But he didn't have to go hard right out of the gate because the game plan was to target and attack Kevin Huerter. That's still going to happen if Kevin comes off the bench.
Right.
But I think Kevin, like you said, I think Kevin was a bit overwhelmed last season because of how much the Kings were asking of everybody, specifically asking of him. And in some ways, not for lack of trying, but he kind of became a scapegoat because things weren't working out. And he was one of the obvious reasons why on the defensive end. Now I envision this super simplified role for Kevin Huerter. Hey, defensively, we know what you are. Go out, work hard, be physical, fit into this team defensive identity as best as you can. But when you are on the floor, your job is to be a poacher on the perimeter. Your job is to space the floor. When you get a good look, you have the green light. The one thing that Mike Brown will pull you out of a game for faster than anything else is if you turn down a good shot. Like, that is his philosophy. Like, I don't care how many threes we take. If they're open, you shoot them or I'm pulling your ass out. He's very, very serious about that. So Kevin can go out there and his job is to knock down shots. And now the Kings, I think depth-wise, are in a position to where it's kind of brutal. It's kind of harsh, and Kevin might not like it, but hey, you have a first half where you're 0 of 5 from 3-point range and it just doesn't look like you have it, you're done for the night. And then Devin Carter gets a few more minutes, or Keon Ellis gets a few more minutes. That might be the way it is. But there's also going to be a night, hell, there could be a month where Kevin Huerter is shooting 40 to 50% from 3-point range, and you have to have him out there.
Yep.
So
he's the type of
go.
Yeah. No, he's the type of player who he can carry a team all on his own for like a stretch of 10 games. Like when he gets going, he's unstoppable.
So I think a simplified role for Kevin might be exactly what he needs. And again, the competitor in him is not going to be happy losing his starting spot. The competitor in him is not going to be happy being labeled as a one-trick pony. But if he can do that at an elite level to where we know he's capable of doing it because he's done it before here in Sacramento, we're talking about a piece that this team needs if they're really going to become a true contender. And again, to have him at $16 million per year over 2 years, if Kevin can truly master that role and dedicate himself to that role fully, I think we're talking about a player that isn't just valuable to the Sacramento Kings. I think we're talking about a player that teams at the trade deadline are knocking on the door asking about.
Yeah, which if the Kings were to trade him now, I think his value is a little low, which we know Monty, I don't think he likes to trade players when the value is low.
Right.
And so potentially you could turn him into like a more defensive, taller wing, or just ride it. If it's going well and the Kings have a good record, just ride it out and see how it's going.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time, my man. Congratulations again on the Sports Illustrated gig. I'm sure you'll have a lot more for us in the build up to training camp. Training camp itself is going to be unbelievably fun, just looking at all these battles and trying to figure out these rotations and what this offense looks like. And then when we get into the regular season itself, there are massively high expectations for this Kings team now. I mean, Monty McNair said it himself. Anything less than making the playoffs is a failure. This is a Kings team that, like, the play-in should be disappointing. That's just the reality of this roster. They put themselves, regardless of how good the West is, the play-in should be disappointing when you have this roster and you have DeMar DeRozan for only the next 3 years. So this team is ready to strike right now. It's going to be a fun team to cover no matter what happens, and you got the coverage there at Sports Illustrated for us all season long. So looking forward to that, my man. It won't be the last time we have you here on Locked On Kings. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks again for having me on, and I can't wait for the season to get here. I'm itching for it already.